everyone. Welcome to SMPS's September event. This is the beginning of our chapter year 2020-2021, starting with a new board. I'm Heather Brown from the Whiting Turner Contracting Company. I'll be your president this year. Just a very quick update. I just want to let everyone know that we will be going virtual through the rest of the year. So we will reassess as a board to get together and make sure it makes sense to come back together next year. It's safe. We also we'll send out surveys to see if it makes sense if our members and non-members feel comfortable as well. So we'll keep you posted on that. As far as an upcoming event and for our October event, we're going to do a forum with breakout rooms with some of our SMPS fellows. We'll learn about lean marketing, planning, and budgeting. So that'll be a good one to look forward to. Save the day for that. We'll get more information soon. Also, the next slide, please. We did send out a membership survey to all the members. If you could fill that out, it helps us with our programming, what you want to learn, what benefits that you enjoy, what you'd like to get more out of SMPS Las Vegas and National. So if you could fill that out, that would be awesome. Also, for any non-members that are interested in becoming a member of SMPS, you can go to our website, SMPSLasVegas.com, and we also have a brief video here that you can watch on the benefits of joining.
Oh, shoot, let me go back to the beginning, I'm sorry.
SMPS is more than just a professional services organization. It's where curiosity meets knowledge, where working meets networking, where selling meets doing, and then doing some more. SMPS brings together like-minded marketers who know the AEC industries top to bottom, inside and out. Whether you're a marketing staff of one or a marketing department of many, SMPS is where proven processes meet inspired and visionary thinking. Your firm might design structures, build facilities, or engineer building systems, and you are charged with generating ideas that help build business. You do more than work together. You depend on each other. In today's competitive landscape, it's survival of the smartest. So you need to continually seek out new methods and approaches that set your firm apart. This is where marketing meets AEC and ambition meets sky's the limit. This is SMPS, business transformed through marketing leadership.
Awesome, goosebumps. All right, so I'm going to introduce my speakers for today. Here we have Brian Gray and Mike Rendell from Revenue Path Group to give us a little bit more information, strategies on how to grow revenue, grab market share, and that kind of stuff. So I'll let you guys take it away.
All right, can you all hear me all right? Hear me good?
Thanks, Heather.
Right. Yeah, thanks, Heather. This is Heather's first meeting as president, so we got to make this like the best all time. So thanks for having us. It's great to be here. I don't know if anyone saw me present out in Las Vegas, probably been 4 or 5 years ago. So it was my first exposure to SMPS Las Vegas, so it's great to be back. Joining me today is Mike Rendell. Mike's one of my business partners and our Chief Executive Creative Director. So today we want to help you learn some things. One thing before we get started, I'll let you know that I don't take myself very seriously. I tell horribly bad jokes, but I take the work I do here very seriously, and we're very, very committed to making sure that this is the best use of your time you could ever imagine. I know we're all dealing with some challenging times here, and you don't need us to tell you that our world's different, that it's going to be not the same as it used to be, but I do think it's important to understand, why we're here. The real reason we are here is to help leaders whose number one priority is to stay relevant and vital, to help them understand the things they need to do moving forward. Because this is not about change coming. We all know that it's already happened. And this isn't just about COVID and our economic uncertainty moving forward. We have what I call the trifecta, and that's that third accelerator. That's the accelerating age we now live in. So we all know that COVID has created quite a disruption and even a dislocation. We understand what it's like now when business is not like it used to be. In fact, we live in a world where there are too many good firms chasing too few of opportunities. And boy, go back to March 10th when there was enough work to go around, and sometimes we hoped we didn't win projects because we didn't have the people to take care of it anyway. We now live in a much different world. And what's really making it difficult is this acceleration that we now live in. It's almost like we have fast forwarded 5 years and have taken the year 2025 and put it right on top of this year. So all the things that we knew were coming have now hit us in a way that this is our new normal moving forward. So this is not something that we can't grasp, but it's something we have to fundamentally deal with, because it's going to be very difficult for us ever to go back to the way things used to be. So what was the year 2025 going to be like? Yes, you would be using video chat with your doctor and only showing up when you absolutely positively needed to. You're going to be having sales meetings where it makes no sense to jump on a plane or drive halfway across the state to have a 1-hour meeting with somebody. We're just going to be, this is all going to be done virtually. And where this creates a real challenge for all of us is for those who really built relationships hand-to-hand, face-to-face. So how do we really start conversations? How do we do things where we can't use the same tools and mechanisms like we used to? And this is going to be something staring us squarely in the eye moving forward. How do we work in a world that continues to accelerate when the things that used to work for me no longer work? And I think that on the positive side here is that sometimes disruption happens and dislocation is so big, it's hard to tell disaster from an opportunity. So while we might look at today's sessions as some defensive measures of how do I protect or how do I save, I really want those who see this as that chance to make a move. There is an opportunity to do things in a way that will help you become much more successful faster. So I'd add to the video, it's not about doing business smarter, it's about doing it smarter and faster. Because the world's moving faster and we can't continue to use things that worked in the past in a world that's going faster and faster. And what's been driving this over the last few years that is now actually accelerating are what we call the 3 deadly C's. And we've all seen this, right? And those 3 deadly C's are commoditization, compressed selling time, and consensus decision-making. These are 3 important concepts I want you to understand. Number 1, commoditization. When everyone looks, sounds, and acts the same, why would they ever choose you over someone they worked with in the past? Why would someone pick you when this other organization is lower priced? And if your prospect thinks you're all the same, why wouldn't price be the deciding factor? Second, they're ignoring you until the very end of their buying journey. So up to 70% of the buying journey is done before they even bring you in. And we're also seeing decision-making teams get bigger and bigger. These are 3 real challenging issues that are now going to get worse than ever. And what this is doing is driving what we call the race to the bottom. Because we believe the biggest current threat you face as an organization is becoming a commodity in your prospect's eyes. And what is making it worse, decision-making teams keep getting bigger, ignoring you until the very end of their buying journey. It's creating a race to the bottom. And this race will not stop on its own. And it's all driven by those 3 deadly C's. These were unavoidable. They're just now accelerating. And what we believe is that organizations are unprepared and ill-equipped to sell how today's buying teams are buying. So the race won't stop on its own. In fact, it's only accelerating. And if your organizations are not prepared or equipped, what does that mean to all of us? It means that we have a rough road to hoe in front of us. So we have some choices. The world's accelerating. I have these 3 deadly C's, so I can either take cover, right? Hunker down and wait for the good times to come back. And if anyone in your leadership in your organization says this is what you need to do, you need to run. Or you need to at least say, time out, stop. Taking cover is not going to help us through this. Waiting this out will not help us. It's actually going to put us in a worse spot when things do turn around. This is a chance for each and every one of you as business developers and as marketers to really start leading the organization. Your principals need you to be telling them these truths. They absolutely positively do. We know that taking cover isn't going to work, and we also know that hope is not a strategy, and doing nothing is not an option. So we have these accelerations going on. We have the 3 deadly C's kicking into full effect, and we have this economic uncertainty. This is probably the reason why you're feeling a little bit of angst and anxiety about moving forward. And what's making it worse, John mentioned this earlier, is that how do we start meeting with complete strangers? It's easy to keep our relationships going, but how do we start something new with a complete stranger? And today we're going to talk to you about what needs to be done so that you can get those conversations started earlier. Because you have to counter the second deadly C, which is compressed selling time. If your firm waits until the very end to start bidding for work, it's going to get ugly fast because commoditization will kick it even further. We need you to meet with strangers earlier in the process. But I can't meet with strangers early in the process. I'm doing the two-person talking to each other. But you need to get in early in the process. So we're going to talk some things that we need to do to make sure we can get those conversations earlier in the process. Because the reality is only the relevant and vital organizations are going to survive. And we're going to teach you today what we call priority positioning. I want you to write that down. Priority positioning. This is going to be really important for you as an organization moving forward to understand A, what it means, and B, how to start deploying your priority position. This is one of my favorite Warren Buffett quotes, which I think is great. It's only when the tide goes out do you discover who's been swimming naked. Because the reality is when the water level recedes, when business starts drying up, we realize who's really prepared to survive in a world of scarcity. Because when the world continues to expand, we all continue to grow because the market continues to grow. But when the market starts going the other direction or starts slowing down, you actually have to go take market share from somebody else to achieve the same level of revenue. So to John, to your point earlier, meeting strangers in today's world is hard to do, but I want to tell everybody it's crucial that you're able to engage with complete strangers because you have to go get new business. We can't rely on our existing relationships because there's not enough new growth within them. So the biggest challenge we face here, I'll tell you one thing, it's not going to take care of itself. Oh, awesome. Hello there, son. Boy. Sorry about that. It's Heather's son. So the biggest challenge you face won't take care of itself, and it's going to get worse on us much faster. In fact, every time I do a webinar, I like to scan something in the news that very day that explains what acceleration is all about. So today's story is this. I'm flipping through the news, and today is quite a news day, just throwing it out there. But I see this article about the U.S. Air Force, and it said that our Air Force, if the General Charles Q. Brown today said, if we don't change, we will see World War II type casualties in our next engagement. So the title of his paper is Accelerate Change or Lose. And what he said was, good enough today will lose tomorrow. So this isn't something that's unique to the AEC industry. This is the U.S. Air Force publishing a story today saying if we don't change radically now, we are going to lose more and more lives moving forward because the world is accelerating around us and we're not changing at that pace. So what I wanted to do today, or what Mike and I wanted to do, is to really share with you what competitive teams are doing today. I'm going to cover 5 areas I think that range from the most foundationally important to some things that are on top of that organizations are using to get better today. Because I want us to make sure we all understand and agree that we're not going to wait this thing out. We're not going to hope that things get better. We're not going to sit and let the world change around us. We're going to actively do something about it. When I was a board member of my local chapter, I kept insisting on, let's make marketing the lead inside these organizations. They need to lead. They can lead. And this is a perfect spot for you to help start leading your organization through this change we're going through. So we're going to share 5 of these today. So number 1, what competitive teams are doing, they're focusing solely on their prospects' priorities. Now, I want you to think about this when you walk into an interview and they say, tell us about yourself. What do we tend to do is we tend to talk about ourselves way too much and way too long. And I'm here to tell you that your prospect doesn't care about any of that. So what competitive and winning teams are going to do is they're going to, first of all, understand who their audience is. They're trying to persuade and convince a 3-pound organ called the brain that while the brain's a powerful and fascinating organ, it's a very primitive and predictable decision maker. And while we're not going to go into too much depth on this today, I want to share a few important slides. Two key parts of the brain, the primitive brain and the rational brain. The primitive brain doesn't know how to read. It only responds to stimuli that can keep it out of trouble. And it's insanely focused on eliminating pains, threats, and fears. The rational brain, on the other hand, is the logical, critical thinking part of the brain. It's the part that has to think about difficult, challenging, intellectual type things. But the fact is, 90% of all decisions happen at the primitive brain level. And guess what the primitive brain cares about? Eliminating its pains, threats, and fears. So the challenge is, and the disconnect is, most people walk into a presentation trying to logically justify why they should be chosen. But the primitive brain is where the brain actually buys. And with the primitive brain is where priority actually happens. So if we connect a couple of the dots here, we talked about the primitive brain's in charge. Over 90% of all decisions happen at the primitive brain level. The primitive brain only cares about eliminating pains, threats, and fears. In fact, that is exactly where priorities established. So when we go back to what competitive teams are doing, they're focusing solely on their prospects' priorities. So let's make sure we understand that, because when you think about it, we don't do what we wish, want, need to do. Our brains actually spend a disproportionate amount of time focused on eliminating pains, threats, and fears with an emphasis on threats. So if you want to win when it's down to you and two other similarly sounding firms, I want you to focus on their priorities in a way that makes those threats and fears actually go away. And if you start that pursuit, you'll find yourself in more better conversations earlier in the process. Second, what competitive teams are doing is they're developing their priority position. I don't want to undersell this category, but I think this is the most important foundation of what we're going to talk about today. And this is something I deeply want you to understand this. So I want you to write down two words: my priority position. Will be three: my priority position, or our priority position. And when you think about your priority position, this really all starts when someone asks you a simple question. Mike, you know what that question is?
Why should I work with you? And
Yeah,
why should I do it now?
absolutely. Two of the simplest questions that your prospect wants to have answered. Why in the world should I choose you? And why should I choose you now for this project? Now, I want you to think back 3 slides to priority. Where does priority get established? Anyone? At the primitive brain. What does the primitive brain only care about? Eliminating pains, threats, and fears. And that is where a priority is established. So there's a lot to that question. Why should I choose you, and why should I choose you now? But when you're able to do it successfully, what it does is it separates you from your competitors, and it drives priority above other options. And we all know that priority creates influence, and influence writes RFPs. So this is how important understanding the priority, your prospects' priorities are, because it gets you in earlier so that you're in the spot where you're writing the RFPs. You're not forced, because when you need the work, you're not forced to responding to RFPs that you may not even know knew were coming. Because we all know the amount of hours that we put into those things, and we weren't even in the driver's seat. So I hear this from principals all over the place. We need to become more influential so we can be the ones writing the RFPs versus the ones responding to the RFPs. I just laid out the formula for making that happen. It all starts with focusing on making your prospects' priorities. So when you think about it, your ability to position yourself in alignment with your prospects' priorities is what your priority position is all about. The ability to position yourself in a way that gets you in early, because when it comes down to your priority position, it's about connecting your real impact, what you really, really, really do for someone. and how it connects to their top priorities. So we're building on these a little bit. If you focus on your prospects' priorities, then we have to understand what your real impact is to those priorities, and then we simply connect those. That's when you start developing your priority position. In fact, there's an entire tool set that comes to developing out your priority position, because if our desire is to become more influential and to meet strangers earlier in the journey, strangers, prospects, however we want to call them, so that we're influential earlier, we need the ability to do that, because if you're going to win, you have to have someone that's willing to fight for you, that's willing to tell the other people on the decisioning team, these people aren't the same. They're really different. This is exactly what we've been looking for. So you need someone or a group of people that are willing to fight for you throughout their entire buying journey. But the question is, are you worth fighting for? And is your priority position such that you are worth fighting for? Because if you show up looking, sounding, and acting like everyone else, no one's going to fight for you. And in fact, when you sound, look, and act like everyone else, why in the world would they meet with you earlier in the process? Why shouldn't they just wait until the RFP comes out? So we're going to talk in a little bit about some of the things that we can do so we're actually able to meet with someone earlier in the process and allow you to meet with complete strangers. And the reason you'll be able to meet with complete strangers is that you're able to communicate in a way that matches a priority they have. Because if you're not going to connect on their priority level, they're not going to spend the time with you. So the question is, what is your current priority position? Now, the best way to find that out is, this is an exercise that can be invigorating, liberating, and very depressing all in one fell swoop. The best way to find out is to walk through the office floors and ask someone to give you their elevator pitch. You call it your priority pitch, but it doesn't make it the elevator pitch. Two simple questions. Hey, Mike, why would someone choose us? And why do you think they should choose us right now for a particular project? And I think you might be surprised a bit by the answers you get, but you're going to get a really good insight of what the priority position is as it's throughout your organization. And I want to tell you something, as we move forward, it's going to be crucial that every single person in your firm is completely aligned around your priority position, and done so in a way that connects to your prospects' priorities. Because we all know that prioritization happens at the primitive brain level. So why does all this matter? And when you think about the 3 deadly C's when it bangs up against your priority position. So we've talked earlier about the fact that 70% of the buying journey is done before they bring you in. So when you think of all the steps, they prioritize, they plan, and then when it's time to procure, they send out the RFP. Well, guess what? They now have a decision-making team that's big. They've already done their planning. They've already thought through what matters to them. And then they're sending this RFP out to 2 or 3 firms that they think can do the work. So guess what? They all think you're the same. They have a big decision-making team, and they know what they want. So guess what happens next? The commoditization game, the race to the bottom happens, because it's all about price. Why wouldn't I make it that way? So they want you here, but guess where you need to be? You need to be way on the other side. You need to be talking to people as they're prioritizing what they want to do, as they plan what they're looking to accomplish. And if you want to meet with someone earlier, you have to be able to connect to a priority at that level. So in essence, we have 2 different playbooks going on. They want to ignore you to the end. They want to make you all the same, and they want to send out the RFP and have you guys race each other to the bottom. But you, on the other hand, want to get in earlier, don't we all? Only a few will, and those who will be taking what we're talking about today and actually moving it into action. So what competitive firms are also doing is they're getting better meetings earlier in the process. So we've talked about focusing solely on their priorities. We've talked about developing out your priority position. And now what competitive teams are doing and winning firms are doing is they're getting better meetings earlier. So let's think about this. Under their playbook, right, RFP goes out. By the way, there's 3 ugly questions you get in an RFP. You want the 3 ugly questions are? Number 1, do you want it? Number 2, can you do it? And number 3, how much? That's really what every RFP is asking, because they know what they want and they're saying to similar firms saying, do you want it? Can you do it? And how much? We, on the other hand, want you to be in much earlier in the process so you can be much more influential. So we want you positioned earlier where you're actually able to be involved at the planning process. We can actually be involved in the prioritization where you have much greater influence than versus if you're brought in at the very end. Because once you get in earlier prioritizing, you can start really meeting with the true decision makers. And they become your champions. And those champions now all of a sudden start building out teams of believers. And then all of a sudden you have a group of supporters. And this is exactly what those firms who are able to quote unquote write the RFP, that's what they've been able to do. They've been able to connect to the prospect's real deep-rooted priorities. They don't connect at what you do, they connect at why you're doing it, right? And how you can help make their pains and threats go away. But you create champions as well as supporters. So what competitive teams are also doing is they're now able to close big deals on screen, because guess what? We're not really showing up at people's locations anymore. So in the old days, we got to sit down and walk through proposals, and now we have to win over a screen. Now, this is different than what we're used to, but it's very, very possible if we think about the priorities and the things that we've been talking about earlier. If you stay focused on your prospects' priorities, if you understand your priority position, you're able to get meetings earlier with people, which has you in an influential spot. Because now we have to win in today's new boardroom. And here's the problem. If you weren't good at presenting before, you're in trouble now. Which, by the way, what's interesting to me is I hear this from every group we talk to and or work with. They'll all say, just get me in front of the prospect. Once we get in a room, I can win them over. But yet we'll have all 3 of the same people saying the same things about one client, which is not always true. Someone's going to win it, right? Everybody thinks they can win once they get FaceTime. But guess what? What happens when that FaceTime is completely taken away? So we have to be much better at being influential and even persuasive, right? Digitally or virtually, because charisma is not enough to get you through anymore. We have to be able to be great out of the gate. In fact, you will be selected or not in the first 9 minutes of your presentation. In fact, in the first 45 seconds, they are making up their mind. Do I want to listen to this guy or this lady anymore or not? And unfortunately, what do we spend the first 45 seconds to 5 minutes doing? Talking about what? Ourselves. How much do you think your prospect's primitive brain cares about you at that moment in time? 0. They don't care about you at all. In fact, the primitive part of the brain where 90% of all decisions happen and decision making is insanely focused on making my pains, threats, and fears go away. This is why having an aligned and powerful elevator pitch or priority pitch is crucially important. I shared ours with you earlier, right? We believe the biggest current threat you face, right? And so you want to be able to pull the brain through a journey that says, wow, he understands my world. That is exactly what I'm experiencing. I'm seeing the same thing every single day, which builds all the credibility. By the way, your educational background and all your experience doesn't build credibility, right? So you have 45 seconds to capture their attention, and you need to make the conceptual sales in the first 9 minutes. And if you look at most of your pitch decks, you don't even get to what makes you you and why they should choose you until minute 14, minute 18, minute 27. And guess where the prospect's brain is by then? Moved on. It takes so much energy to keep the brain awake. What the brain tends to do is space out and stop paying attention. There is one key way to keep the brain engaged, and that is to stay insanely focused on their priorities. And their priorities are going to be those things that can make their pains, threats, and fears go away.
Hey, Brian, let me jump in for a second. This is particularly challenging, I guess, for those of us in the AC industry, because the RFP process and even the way our prospects ask us to present usually starts with us telling them about us. So even they just don't even know that what they're asking us to do is give them information in the wrong order of how they're going to process it. So what I want to encourage you to do is stop thinking about your presentation after your submission. When you're in front of that board or decision committee, stop thinking of that as a way to reiterate what was in your response, and start thinking of that as an opportunity to really cut a divide between you and your competition, and to hit those priorities right out of the gate, because that's what they're going to remember. Even if they give you a very distinct agenda for what they want you to cover in that presentation meeting, take the opportunity to spend the first 2 minutes hitting their priorities. I assure you, they will not penalize you for it.
Nope, not at all. And again, this is a world where we have, right now, more good firms than opportunities. And so this is a situation where we can't afford to lose more than we should. In fact, we've got to go win at a higher percentage than we may have in the past, because we all have more distractions than ever before. And we all know that from a brain's perspective, the easiest thing to do is stay where you're at and not make a change. And also, we need the right kind of visual aids to keep attention, because the deciding part of the brain, which is the primitive brain, doesn't know how to read and loves visual imagery and wants someone to tell them a story and to pull them through a journey that helps show the two questions, right? Why should I choose you? And why should I choose you now? So what we've talked about, I think, is some real interesting foundations. I think they're crucial moving forward. Again, there's nothing complicated about what we talked about, but it's going to be very difficult, very hard to do, because we have to simplify and really connect your real impact to your prospects' priorities. And while that sounds simple, it takes a reasonable amount of effort to understand what your real impact is, and to be able to create a priority position that actually connects to your prospects' priorities. So a couple other things I wanted to share that there are other, what competitive teams are doing right now is, we all know that, again, with too many chasing too few, there are firms that are actually analyzing what we call game film. So they're able to understand every interaction that you have with a prospect. And that now becomes what we call moments of truth. We don't believe in meetings anymore. We believe every interaction is a moment of truth. And a moment of truth means you've got to crush it or you're done. In the old days, we had multiple touch points. We can get to people in different ways. Now we have so few opportunities to get face-to-face or virtual to virtual with our prospects that is a true moment of truth. And a moment of truth means either you advance or you fall off, because there are no do-overs anymore. And what we have found is those competitive firms that really want to win moving forward are actually looking at this like game film. So they're studying how they perform, much like any professional athlete. They always consistently look at game film to best understand how they could improve and grow. And with today's technology, in most of our meetings virtual, you can actually now start tracking and using AI, and you can provide real feedback on every single interaction you had with a prospect. And for those who really, really, really want to get good, are going to look at this opportunity to get better and better and better. I know this is challenging for a lot of people, but I tell you, I don't know if any of you watched the Last Dance, the story of Michael Jordan and the Bulls in the 90s. Even if you're not a basketball fan, just the competitive spirit and how hard they worked to get where they were, and how somebody as good as Michael Jordan still practiced harder than anyone else out there. They all looked at game. Even Dennis Rodman would study game film. That's how he became the greatest rebounder in the world, but by studying game film. So I haven't met a business person yet who says, I don't need to look at game film. I'm as good as I can be. That might have been acceptable when times are great, but when they're not, what are we really doing to make ourselves better?
Guys, this is not technology of the future either. It's out there now. There are multiple platforms that let you do this, and including some that we work with, but we encourage you to start looking at because it is a wealth of information.
Yep, and it's hard. I mean, you know, all growth begins with telling the truth. I know that. In anyone who wants to get really, really good at what they're doing is going to take they're going to take a mindset and approach that I can get better. We all can get better. Every single one of us can get better and better and better every single day. And what's unfortunate is that we have to get better if we want to stay relevant and vital. Even the general of the U.S. Air Force saying we have to get better today or we're going to suffer big losses moving forward. It's no different whether the Air Force or you're a construction company or an architecture firm. So, and also competitive teams are doing this. They're adapting to this new world. And I think this is something where this is kind of back to the idea of how do we go meet with strangers, right? And I think that we have to think in this world of how we used to be successful being reactive. Now we must be proactive. It's almost like, you know, waiting for things to come to us versus us going and taking what should rightfully be ours. And for us having that ability to get better meetings earlier with people. They're just not going to meet with you because they want to talk to a stranger today. Their brains will accept a meeting and they will be completely engaged if you can stay focused on their priorities and how you can make their pains and threats go away. But you have to lead with an idea. You have to have an insight that speaks to a priority or a threat that they have. So we have to think in terms of existing demand versus emerging demand. And this is one of the reasons why we're being boxed up until the very end. Because people think they know what they need. They have a distinct way of buying. They've done it for years. They plan it. They figure out what they want to do. They plan it out, and then they ask for bids. That's what existing demand is. And many people jump to say, okay, we'd love to bid on this project. That's not going to be successful anymore. In fact, artificial intelligence will actually take over and start bidding for you. There's no need for us to sit and wait for things and react. Success and surviving will depend on those who can service emerging demand. Remember earlier I showed you that graph where you start getting into the prioritization and planning phase. The only way you can do that is if you're servicing emerging demand, when you're leading with thoughts and insights that connect to priorities they have. They will let you in. But you've got to ask yourself, why in the world would they want to talk to me? And why in the world should they talk to me now? And answer that question. And I bet when most people answer that question, they wouldn't take a call from themselves. Right? When you hear the people saying, why would people choose us and why now? And when you hear the answer, well, I wouldn't choose us if that were the reason. So think about a complete stranger. So if you believe that it's not about waiting for things to come to us, that those that are going to survive and thrive are going to focus on emerging demand, we need you to develop out the right kind of insights and the right kind of topics and ideas that actually engage their brain much earlier in the process. Otherwise, you fall for their playbook, which is wait till the end, I send out the RP, and then I want you to bid on it. And we spend way too much time. We don't even know their priorities. You know, we wouldn't have done it that way. They're doing it all wrong, and you've missed your shot to influence that. That's really, really important. In fact, we need to start thinking like the mountain lion versus just the birds in the nest waiting for opportunities to come our way, because there just are not enough opportunities coming right now. And there are just too many firms that want to grow. In fact, every single thing I shared with you, we have to think of, if we choose not to do it, that's okay. But are you going to be okay with the consequences when your competitor does that to you? That's actually more inspiring. Like, yeah, that seems like a lot of work. But I'll tell you, it gets really hard is when your competitors do all the things I just talked about and are actively getting better every single day. They're focused on their prospects' priorities. They're getting better meetings earlier in the process. And we're left going, man, it's getting tough out there. All we're doing is just painting the picture. And again, this is hard work. It's just not complicated. So I want to make sure that we all understand before we wrap today, there's some things we really need to do. So one of the things I mentioned earlier was that knowing that we work with leaders whose number one priority is to stay relevant and vital. I always like to make things super, super simple because I'm such a simplicist, I'll call myself, not a simpleton. But one of the things I do like simple things because I can deal with hard. I just don't like complicated. So I always like to think of the decisions that we really need to make moving forward if we want to stay relevant and vital. So I like to think of the decisions that we have to make. Number one, and I think that these are ways I'd like you to think about yourself and even take to the principles of the organization, because these are decisions she needs to make. They all need to make these same decisions. And that first one is, do you really want to compete? And I know that sounds like, man, how dare you? But I'll tell you one thing, if you believed anything that Mike and I are saying, and we laid out the just five, there are about 8 or 9 of these total. Maybe if you invite us back, we could share the others. We just don't have enough time to get up through all of them. But if you look at the top 5, I hopefully picked 5 of the most important ones. But what competitive teams are doing today, and you're like, that sounds cool, that's interesting, yeah, I can see that. And you do nothing with that, I would challenge whether someone wants to compete or not. So that's not as simple of a question. I mean, that's a very hard question. Do you want to compete? And if the answer is yes, and then the second is, will you commit to creating your priority position? Because this is the linchpin here. Because if you don't understand your priority position and you can't even articulate it, and not only that, you can't even get the people on your team saying the same thing, how in the world do we expect to meet with people earlier in the process where we know darn well we can be way more influential? So this isn't about branding. Branding is confusing. Branding's logos and taglines and slogans. I'm talking about your priority position is, why in the world would someone meet with you right now? Why would they stop what they're doing and talk to you months before that RFP goes out? It's only when you have a strong priority position will they actually take that meeting with you and actually engage with you. And the third decision you have to make is, how much of a head start do you want to surrender to your competitors? Because we live in a world where we have to move faster. I don't like it. It's kind of fascinating to me. But the fact is, the world's moving much faster than we've ever seen and will ever see moving forward. In fact, what's interesting is when you think about this, that when we look backward in time, this is the fastest we've ever gone. But when you look forward, this will be the slowest we'll have ever gone moving forward. So we now live in that spot where we've actually reached the inflection point where not just the rate of change, but the speed of the rate of change is accelerating at the same time. And if we don't do something, we have to decide, are we going to give our competitors a head start to us? And knowing this is the guy that did the work fits the time allotted. So I like this one as well. Delay is the deadliest form of denial, right? Holding and pausing and taking no action whatsoever is just nothing but denial. And I think if we understand that, we can actually deal with it. But let's not kid ourselves, right? Unless you think everything I shared with you, don't believe it, don't believe it, don't believe it, kind of believe it, don't believe it. I'll give you that. But if you believe what we're saying is to be true and we do nothing about it, just know that delay is the deadliest form of denial. So what did we learn today? I hope you learned a lot. I know I went quickly, but we learned there are some real things that we need to work on, right? That competitive firms are doing. Number one, they're focusing solely on their prospects' priorities. Anything else is noise. You must create that direct signal to the primitive part of the brain, right? Focus on your prospects' priorities. You're developing out your priority positioning. Why would someone choose you? Why would they choose you now? You're able to get better meetings earlier. Don't wait for the RFP. Help write the darn thing. You're able to start winning more work on screen and not reliant on getting in the room because you may not be allowed to get in the room again. We're actually looking at the work we're doing critically and the efforts and our moments of truth, and we're using game film to be able to study and get better and improve every single day. And we're actually doing what it takes to adapt to today's world. We do have one more thing, and Mike wanted to share. Mike, can I share you the screen real quick? You want to go ahead and grab it? Because Mike put together a pretty cool idea. You got it, Mike? You're on mute as well.
All right, sorry about that. Are you guys seeing me now?
Yep.
All right. So just quickly, I am going to go pretty quickly on this because I want to save some time for questions, and we already have a couple of questions coming in. But as a special thank you for your time and for SMPS Las Vegas members, we are throwing out a free giveaway and an opportunity to do an assessment of your priority pitch or your elevator pitch, exactly the way Brian was talking about. So just to reset back to what he was saying, we know that the elevator pitch is important because in these moments of truth, you've got one shot to get it right. And the question is, does your team have the ability to do that? Can they get in earlier? And can they capture the attention of real decision makers? As we said, we look at every opportunity and every interaction with a prospect as a moment of truth. So can your team get in earlier with higher level decision makers? Well, guess what? We have a really great way of determining that. We recently developed something that we call the Priority Pitch Challenge. And this is a very nice toe in the water into the game film principle that we talked about earlier. We have a system that allows us to invite your people into an electronic platform where they are able to essentially be presented with a moment of truth, and we record their elevator pitch. Right? Now, there's a lot of steps here, and we're going to give you information about this so you can get the full guide of how this goes. But I'm going to click over and just give you a better understanding of what you're going to get when we do this. So as part of the Priority Pitch Challenge, we will do a review of your sales team, up to 15 people. And each of those people will log in, they'll do their pitch, and then we'll take a closer look at their specific pitch and do some scoring. Now, within the scoring, what we're going to look at is things like total time spent presenting, the content grade level of what they're presenting, whether it's super technical speak or if they're hitting the sweet spot of an 8th to 9th grade reading level. We're also going to look at keywords that they're using and some priority words or selling words that we emphasize. After that, then we're going to give them an overall performance score from our priority pitch consultants within our team. So just to step back here, then you'll get that for every member of your team, and within one deck, you'll be able to click everybody's videos, watch them in a PowerPoint environment, so it's easy to use, easy to see. It will give you a very good baseline understanding of where your team is at and what to do next, and emphasize who needs to be trained and what they need to be trained on. So again, we're going to send out a follow-up to this, including a recording of today's presentation, as well as a registration form to sign up for this giveaway. We're going to end registration for the giveaway or signups for the giveaway on Monday, and we'll be giving away one lucky winner, free of charge. Anybody
Awesome.
have any questions on that?
How about some group questions, Mike? I see Brittany. Brittany. I love you, Brittany. How you doing? I want to take, because Brittany's like super awesome. I met Brittany, my gosh, Brittany Bleak, last time I presented out in Las Vegas. They've been great friends of ours, and hopefully we've helped them with some really interesting work. Brittany's question was, do you ever compromise on your priority position in order to win work during tough times? That's a very good question, Brittany. And I'll tell you, it's one of those questions that at least know what you're doing when you're doing it. And because a lot of our businesses are very similar. And we've been in that spot too. We're like, we know we're doing this just for the work. And when times are better, right, you become super selective and you only work with people who appreciate that. But I think the key is in tough economic times, I will never be the one to say sacrifice nothing, only focus on people who believe the same things you believe, but at least acknowledge when you're doing something for the money and not doing it because they're a perfect fit, because chances are you're not going to bring the same level of passion to it. So just clear-eyed, looking straight forward, saying, yes, we're doing this for the money, and I'll be clean with it and work toward those days where you don't have to do it. So I don't know if that really answered the question, but I think we're all susceptible to that. but at least know when we're doing something that's violating our beliefs, and we know we don't want to do that on too many times. What other questions? Sarah, Mike.
And we had a great question here from Ann. Do you have any other examples of good priority pitches, even from other industries? Or are there some lead-ins that you like to use, such as,
oh my gosh,
etc.?
Yeah, thanks, Ann. I didn't get the chance to plug the book. We have a book called The Priority Sale coming out January 1st. It's like the first book to be published in 2021. But we're going to talk a lot about different priority pitches. But yes, I do believe I can share with you, Ann, the construct, the construct, and when you think about the journey the brain needs to go through, the brain prioritizes threats, right? Remember, the primitive brain prioritizes pains, threats, and fears, and with a real emphasis on threats. And when you share a journey, we need to understand that we go to the pain, then we go to the threat, then we provide the emotional lift. And every priority pitch should be able to follow that very measure. And so this idea of we believe, because belief is something that connects at a very deep, visceral level. So every industry I can share with you, and in fact, we can have a conversation after this. We can walk through some other examples. But every example that works is done in a way that allows the prospect to say, wow, you understand my world. So in a world where, right, revenues are hard to come by, margins are even harder, all of a sudden it starts building a bit of credibility. And what happens when you're stuck with that is you're making tougher decisions you've ever had to make before, right? And then we believe, and then you start pulling them out of that journey. So the key is make sure that they feel that you understand their pain, but you've got to take it that next level and make them feel the threat. In fact, with ours, it's a race to the bottom. Your people are unprepared and ill-equipped. Then you can start lifting them out, because it's when they believe that, yeah, he's right, we are not prepared and we are ill-equipped, and it's going to get worse faster on me. That's when the brain starts prioritizing that, because the brain only prioritizes what can make a threat go away. And that's why you have to be in a position to be able to call out that threat so they can make it go away. And in a world of scarcity, when there are too many people with too many great ideas, the victory is going to go to those who can actually connect your real impact to their top priority. Thank you, Ann. What else?
That's it for right now. And I'd also like to add to that, part of the exercise that we like to do when it comes to developing these value propositions or elevator pitches is constantly asking ourselves, so what, every time we make a statement.
Yeah.
And I would also encourage all of you, as you're working on your own priority statements, you need to keep them simple for two reasons. One, they need to be easy to consume, so the people that are hearing them can take it in and act on it. And perhaps more importantly, they need to be easy to present. Everybody on your team, and I mean everybody on your team, should be able to get behind and be able to recite this priority pitch when you get to that point. We, every week on our team call on Mondays, we put one of our team members up in front of everybody, and we practice and practice and practice and practice. And we do that so that we can get better at it. And the alignment that it's gotten us has been phenomenal. As people start to gather around those ideas, because they are the reasons why we actually do the work that we do. So beyond having a serious benefit to our prospects, there is a serious internal cultural impact that developing a good priority pitch will have on your team as well.
All right, if no other questions, Heather, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Brian, Mike, and Sarah. That was great. I have about 12 pages of notes I took here myself. A lot of really good information in there that I'm looking forward to sharing with my team.
I want to go kick in a door, well, a virtual door.
Yeah. Yeah, seriously. I'm about to go set up a meeting right now. So that was great. So if there were any other questions, looking forward to the email from you guys. And thank you so much for your time. Again, our next event will be October 14th, a forum with some SMPS fellows to work on marketing plans. And looking forward to seeing everyone again in the next event.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Cheers. Thank you.